probably the most distasteful thing a director's ever said recently. What a way to dehumanize Indian people because the vocal minority isn't gassing up your studio-mandated film. High time James Gunn's Diaper Man should be banned from India, as him and his fan base have been constantly racist towards Indians. Notice how 90% of comic book Twitter criticized Gunn's racism towards Indians, but Gunnites praised him in the name of he's not wrong. DC Studios, currently run by James Gunn and Peter Safran, has been repeatedly targeting India's sovereignty and its citizens through their movies, interviews, and fandom. Here's a thread exposing their hateful propaganda against India. Online outrage has exploded over a comment that James Gunn made recently in response to a question about internet hate that was sorta, him responding to Snyder Bros. Now, instead of hearing it from me, here's what James Gunn himself actually said in full with all the context presented.
And obviously you're active online. We've seen what you've had to deal with from time to time.
That's right. A couple little things
here and there. Was any of that infusing in here cathartic for you, or why did you want to incorporate Superman's responses that he has towards online criticism?
Well, obviously I relate. Obviously I relate to that. I do tune out most of social media, but every once in a while there'll be somebody who will say something. It's always the weirdest stuff. It's never what you expect. Some weird thing, and I go, God, that guy, and then I go, I think I might be getting upset about something a 12-year-old in India is saying. You know what I mean? I'm like, let it go. But I think that was really about, that whole scene, in fact, is about focusing on the personal human side of Clark and being able to see who he is in an interior way. And he is one of the world's best guys. He's so kind. He's always looking out for people in need, but he's not perfect. He's flawed.
Any normal, rational person should know that this quote is not racist, it's not derogatory. Instead, it's James Gunn just simply using a broad metaphor for saying, hey, I should not worry about someone that's halfway across the world and what they think of me. Despite this, fans, and I should say they aren't really DC fans, these are more of the Snyder cultists that I've been talking about for a while, they have decided to weaponize this and use it as a narrative of sorts that James Gunn is a racist. We're going to go through the Snyder fan reactions, the Gunn fan reactions, and then sort of like your everyday normal people, and try to find some middle ground in all of this. I think the first thing I want to kind of talk about is how a lot of people have been saying that this comment in particular is a direct attack on Zack Snyder and his fan base. And if you're someone like me, you're going, what does any of that have to do with any of this? Let me try and explain it to the best of my ability. After doing some digging, I found out that a very large section of the Zack Snyder fan base are from India and Southeast Asia, kind of like that general sort of area. Again, I had no idea because I really don't care about the ethnicity of someone's fan base. I'm not really too concerned with any of that. So for me, it was like, oh, all right. Here's some of the tweets that I saw from Snyder fans explaining why this exact comment is a slight towards Zack Snyder fans in a racist manner. This one's from Jason LeBoy Photo, and he says, he knows Zack has a very large following in India. This was racist and a direct insult to Zack and his fan base. He is the head of a studio. He shouldn't waste his time with online post. Another person says, Snyder has taste and is a fan of Indian culture. That's part of why Indians love him. And then attached is a screenshot of Zack Snyder sharing Hindu art and then claiming that he used it as inspiration for some of his films. So that is sort of where that logical leap started. It's Zack Snyder has a lot of fans from India and Southeast Asia, and then from here, James Gunn is insulting them specifically, which is why he chose India. Here's a post though from someone who tries to kind of break it down in a much more rational sense. Reminder, Gunn said basically that he shouldn't care about someone on the other side of the planet rage baiting him, but he said India, and that means racism, and they've taken this as Gunn is racist. So now it's okay to call everyone who's a fan of him on the same level as Mustache Guy from Germany. Here's a tweet from a friend of the channel, Super Daikaiju Tony, who tweeted out, Snyder fans all of a sudden caring about racism over James Gunn's 12-year-old kid from India comment after months of saying the most insane shit imaginable is laughably ironic. And attached is some of the best of, or rather the worst of, Snyder fans being downright insane. The first one here is them wishing that James Gunn's wife is... yeah, you can read it yourself. The other one is them comparing Superman to a Jewish caricature. It's insane. The other one is talking about how Superman is an immigrant, but not really, because it's a legal immigrant and that the parents of his creators were legal immigrants. It's weird mental gymnastics. And the other one is insanity. I don't want to go over all this, but you get the idea. Now, something that I ended up stumbling upon while researching this video is this insane conspiracy theory that was like multiple posts long, and it's about how James Gunn and Peter Safran and DC as a whole, how they hate India and are using propaganda to target their sovereignty and to break the will of the Indian people. And upon looking more into the account, it is a Zack Snyder fan. But I want to kind of go through this entire thread in detail and just kind of talk about it because it's insane. It's certifiably like it is the schizo has found patterns in the numbers level of like justification for some of these. It's crazy. Here's the first one. DC Studios, currently run by James Gunn and Peter Safran, has been repeatedly targeting India's sovereignty and its citizens throughout their movies, interviews, and fandom. Here's a thread exposing their hateful propaganda against India. In Injustice 2021, Kashmir is depicted as a disputed region. Superman and Wonder Woman destroy Indian military equipment and declare the region as an arms-free zone. The Justice League destroy Indian Air Force FA-18D Hornets armed with AIM-9L Sidewinder infrared IR close combat missiles, CCMs, over Kashmir in the movie. Now, something I should say right off the bat is, I don't think that was specifically mentioned in the movie. I also don't think they understand that Injustice is an Elseworld story, meaning you're gonna have alternate history with this timeline. Like, it would be like saying DC hates America because they made Red Sun, a story where Superman ended up going to the Soviet Union instead of Kansas. Like, no, it's an Elseworld story where there's gonna be geological differences with each instance. And in this, it just so happens that they chose India as being a place where there's a lot of combat going on. Now, I'm not too knowledgeable in this. I'm not gonna claim that I'm an expert in geopolitical debates like this, but from my understanding, Kashmir is a territory that India, Pakistan, and China have all sort of like been fighting over for years, and they'll claim that, oh, we own this chunk of land, and then the other country will say, no, we own this chunk of land, and it's just been a debate that's been ongoing. As of right now, the UN labels it as disputed land. So to me, I don't really see an issue in Injustice using disputed land, Kashmir, as a plot point, because that's what it is. It's disputed land. So of course there would be conflicts there, and of course then in a fictional story, the Justice League would have to step in and stop the fighting. Something else I think is very important to talk about too is how Injustice 2021 was not produced under James Gunn's leadership. At that time, he was still making the Suicide Squad, and I don't think he was yet named as the new head of DC Studios. I think that's complete misinformation to say otherwise, like that is literal fact. Let's continue though. In Watchmen Chapter 1, 2024, the James Gunn and Peter Safran run DC Studios once again targets the sovereignty of India by incorrectly depicting Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as part of Pakistan and Aksani Chin as part of China. Yet again, this is just DC using disputed land as a place to set a story where there will be conflict. That is just storytelling 101. It would be the same thing as setting a story in Israel, because that's currently a very hot topic. There's a lot of conflict that's going on right there, so it would make sense if you want to ground your story in the real world. It just so happens that with this, you kind of get the jackpot of it's three countries involved, with it being India, Pakistan, and China. To me, this person just comes off as someone who is from India and is very, very upset that they are not claiming that these occupied territories are Indian. They wish that they were being labeled as being Indian territories, but they just aren't. And that's what they are so upset by. It is a little blip on a map that you see in the background of a scene that most people aren't really going to be paying attention to. The DC fandom has also repeatedly targeting Indians with racist remarks. It's also concerning that several accounts involved in this harassment campaign against Indians allegedly involve bots, most of which speak in favor of DC Studios and its products. To me, this just reads as, there are accounts that are racist towards Indians, which is of course wrong. I'm not trying to get that part twisted. That is wrong and you shouldn't do that. But I don't think that DC Studios is funding a bot farm to be racist specifically towards Indians. I think that is genuinely nuts. I completely disagree with that sentiment. There's no way a company that is gearing up for a film that will be released in India is creating a bot farm that is then racist towards Indians. That makes no sense whatsoever. The thread continues, and then we basically get to see where this person is coming from and what their call to action is. They want Superman 2025 to be banned in India. Why? To hurt its box office. This is a Zack Snyder fan. That's all they care about, is box office and bad reviews. Like, this is a conspiracy theory first and foremost. That's exactly what this is. It's mind-blowing to me. Like, it's so, like, you have to connect a million different dots to try and figure out, yeah, we're gonna restructure country lines and, borders in order to demoralize the people of India. It's like, I don't think they give a shit. I really don't think they care that much. And if they do, I don't know what to tell you, because it's like, it's a cartoon made in a country that isn't your own from 4 years ago, I think it's also important to note that James Gunn himself has said multiple times that he is a big fan of Indian cinema, that dating as far back as the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, he has used them as inspiration for his own work. Some people have said that these claims by him are like damage control, and it's his way of sort of like trying to get the hate to stop, but I completely disagree. This very much seems like someone who actually cares about Indian cinema and has talked about it multiple times, like without the need to like do damage control or anything. I mean, James Gunn himself has been very much a worldly filmmaker in terms of his influences. A big example of this is his love for Japanese cinema, specifically kaiju films. He's talked about how much he loves Ultraman. There's pictures of him and a guy in an Ultraman costume together, which I like to think that that's just the real Ultraman, but we'll go on. He loves Godzilla. I mean, there were talks, from my understanding, that way back when the MonsterVerse was first kind of starting out, that he was one of the directors that was in talks of joining the MonsterVerse as a director. He just seems like someone who cares a lot about movies from around the globe, and I don't think that that's a slight against him or even just a positive. It's just a basic sort of like look at him as a filmmaker. Like, that's immediately clear. Now, alongside the racism allegations, the Snyder fans and general critics have brought up the pedophilia accusations, which I do want to talk about here, since I kind of briefly touched upon them in prior videos, and I feel like now would be a good time to kind of talk about that whole drama, because it is very insane on the surface. It really is. So in case you might not have remembered, or if you forgot, or you weren't even made aware, way back in the day, this was about right before Guardians 3 was about to start filming, or maybe it was in pre-production, James Gunn was canceled on Twitter for having a bunch of offensive tweets. And a lot of them involved, rape jokes or pedophilia jokes or racist jokes, what have you. These were edgy and offensive jokes that were made during his Troma era. If you don't know what Troma is a film production company, distribution company that made films like Night of the Poultrygeist, The Toxic Avenger, Tromeo and Juliet, you name it. Their whole brand is making some of the most offensive and disgusting movies imaginable. I mean, if you want an idea of like some Troma alumni, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park, worked with Troma on their film Cannibal the Musical. Like, that is a studio that is known for pushing boundaries. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course he'd make very off-color jokes. Like, that's totally in line for not just him, but that studio as well. Now, as a result of these tweets, Gunn was fired by Disney, but was later rehired after an investigation found no wrongdoing whatsoever. This is stuff from years ago, and it has been addressed publicly by everyone involved, and it seems like everyone involved has just sort of moved on, as this guy had an edgy phase in his life, and then he grew out of it, was fired for it, and then came back and made a great movie. Like, it's over, it's in the past. I think accusing someone of something as serious as pedophilia or even racism is downright dangerous for a multitude of reasons. It dilutes the gravity of those charges when they are brought against someone when it's completely justified. It's literally the boy who cried wolf. If everyone that makes an edgy joke is labeled as being a racist or a pedophile, then when someone who actually is one of those things and is very serious about it, when that is brought to light, you're just going to be written off. Now, let me explain why this type of name calling can be so dangerous, especially in today's age. I made 2 videos. One was called The Godzilla Degenerates, where I talked about a bunch of Godzilla fans that turned out to be pedophiles. and I brought that up in the video. I went kind of case by case, and there were a few comments where it's like, yeah, I mean, there's pedophiles all over, so who really cares? And there were just a lot of dismissive comments towards that, when it's like, no, there's legitimate evidence here that these people are targeting children. And that broke my heart. The other one is a video on Transformers Prime Galvatron's Revenge. It's a fan film that was made where the main actor that played Optimus Prime is a literal neo-Nazi. This guy is a literal Nazi. He had swastikas in the background of his videos. He would do the salute, the one that I'm sure you're all imagining right now. He would say downright horrific stuff about people that were not white. This is someone who literally was a Nazi. And you had people in the comments like, oh, at first when you called him a Nazi, I was kind of skeptical, but now that I saw the evidence, I get it. And it's like, this is what constantly name-calling innocent people, labeling them as these things, this is what it has done to the internet, and it's sad, it really is. There are real cases of racial discrimination and child endangerment, child abuse. These are things that require actual attention. Calling someone a bigot or a pedophile over a milquetoast comment just makes real advocacy even harder. Weaponized outrage like this doesn't help victims, it only harms them in the end. Because like I said, it's the boy who cried wolf. They're not gonna believe you for the millionth time if you say, this person's a pedophile, this person's a racist. You need to have actual evidence to back it up. And frankly, I haven't seen any actual evidence beyond tweets taken out of context, jokes taken out of context, and interview clips taken out of context. And I'm not just saying this because I'm defending James Gunn or I'm a gun bot, which, by the way, Gunbot is like one of the coolest labels ever. It sounds like something out of like 40K. I've also heard hashtag gun control get thrown around, which I think is also like a badass like hashtag. I don't even know who started that, if that was James Gunn fans or like the Snyder fans. I really don't know, but I think it sounds cool. Like with the two ends, it's great stuff. I'm someone that just wants a good movie. I want an accurate Superman depiction. I'm someone who's very excited for Superman. Right next to me, in fact, I literally have my copy of All-Star Superman. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I want a great Superman adaptation put to film, and I hope that we get it. If not, I'm not gonna cope and say, oh, it was actually the greatest movie ever, and you guys are just too dumb for it. I'm not gonna be a Batman versus Superman fan. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna give my honest opinion, like I always do. But I just think it's important to note that this entire controversy is not about racism. It's about Snyder loyalists trying to tear down the new DC Superman. That's what this is. You can dislike the James Gunn version of Superman, even though it's not out yet. You can be upset by the studio politics. You can prefer Zack Snyder's vision. That is all fair game, and I'm more than okay with people enjoying that. In fact, there's a lot that I personally like about Zack Snyder's work, which I will talk about in an upcoming video. But twisting harmless comments into career-ending controversies is just so dangerous. It's not activism, it's manipulation. Like, flat out, that's what it is. I think it's overall wrong to turn petty fandom beef into social justice battles that ultimately benefit no one except for the aggressors in this case. And with all that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick, you're watching Firewood Media. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I am very excited for Superman, and for those that are a bit concerned about when the next Superman retrospective of mine will come out, stay tuned because Superman Returns will be out Wednesday. I'll have a whole in-depth deep dive on that movie, talk about why I love it, why I hate it, everything in between. Thursday is my big Snyderverse video where I talk about the 3 main Superman Snyderverse films, including the Snyder Cut and the theatrical cut. And then finally, Friday, I'll have my big Superman review out. I'm seeing it Wednesday in IMAX before it's actually out. I have Amazon Prime, so I bought my tickets in advance. I'm so excited, and I'll make my video talking about that. It's going to be a big one, I'm sure. And then the following week, I'll make a big kind of supercut of all my Superman retrospective videos, and then that should be out Wednesday or Friday. I'm not sure yet, but yeah. After that, I'm really thinking about making a big Batman Arkham retrospective where I talk about all the games, some of like the tie-in comics that exist, and then also some of the cartoons that were made that were like said to be in that universe. I don't know. But if you're curious about that and you want to see more, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.